Finally! I am so pumped to try the Zelda game that has an art style that will never be contradictory to anyone! Yes! This booklet proves it! Cell shading is in! Best instruction booklet I've ever seen!
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! It's Wind Waker HD on the Nintendo Wii U, which is sure to be their best console yet! It's gonna be the best console ever! Oh, and the manual. Imagine the manual this time. It'll be beautiful HD photos and thicker and even more colorful. And I can't wait. I can't wait to. What the hell? Okay. It's good to see ya! Welcome to the weekend. Shep here from Gaming Introspection, where we take a game, character, or topic and completely expand upon it in depth. And if you're as old as I am, what better way to elicit some nostalgia feelings than by appreciating a medium that has long since been extinguished from video games? Instruction booklets.
In the 80s and 90s, no one had quick internet access to find a controller diagram layout, much less a complete walkthrough like we have today. Nor would we find out any in-depth details about the characters or story. That's why instruction booklets were a necessity. When I was a young kid, getting a new game was a huge experience. It didn't happen very often, so every part of it, including the manual, was savored. I would always take the booklet out first thing and absorbed all the information I could. They gave us the ground rules for each game, laid everything out in an organized way, and especially in the earlier years, treated us to some amazing artwork and plot details. Speaking of those earlier years, let's divide this look back into eras, starting with the first that I am able to remember. The visual stylization always absorbed me into whatever the new game was that I was buying. Often these were adventure, fantasy, or role-playing games, and when the graphics looked like this, the instruction booklets gave us more of what our imagination craved when playing the games. We could more effectively picture the characters, weapons, and settings if there was a booklet that made an effort to characterize this. The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on SNES is a great example of this. I mean, look at the very first page. If that's not inspiring you to play the game and find the Master Sword, I don't know what will. And immediately afterwards, you're treated to a deep narrative describing the myth of the Triforce, the Holy Land, a comprehensive history of Ganon, the mutiny that occurred. It's dark. Check this quote out. After vanquishing his own followers, the leader stood triumphant over the Triforce and grasped it with his blood-stained hands. I mean, that's quite hellish for a classic that's often remembered as a kiddie game from 1992. Better yet, it gives players a glimpse into Zelda's telepathic powers that you'd witness soon after starting the game. The animations of Link performing actions make even the controller layout instructions appealing. The artist should have maybe given Link a bit more modesty though. Yeah, that's slightly disturbing. Switching genres for a second, SimCity, the original, came out in 1991 and was a very complex game for the time, so it makes sense that its manual was pretty heavy on text. But look at the presentation! You've got Bowser highlighting the disasters page, Dr. Wright giving you inside looks at failed cities to teach players the follies of different mistakes. And there's even a glossary at the back in case there's too many buzzwords for you to memorize at once. For a game that preaches patience and strategy, it's an exciting and alluring design. When it comes to stylization and artwork though, I still have yet to find anything that rivals Chrono Trigger. At over 80 pages, this was and still is a beast of a manual. The sheer size of it let you know the sheer amount of awesomeness you're about to sink many weekend hours into. I've read this so many times over the last quarter century, and it's not held up well. The cover was torn off years ago, but damn, look at the colors and the style of the Akira Toriyama artwork. It showcases the personality and time period of each character effortlessly. Speaking of Toriyama, just look at the amount of crazy detailed artworks featuring so many settings and characters. How could you not want to play this game when you look at this? There's a samurai dude hiding behind a huge-ass robot who's pointing its laser cannon at a hysterically animated reptile while scared rats screech at a humanoid frog from the opposite direction. Look at this one. Who's this guy? He looks like a huge boss, right? I mean, there's no way he would ever be a playable character, but he sure looks cool. I mean, damn, this is just amazing.
Before he retires, Toriyama has to make an animated version of Chrono Trigger for some kind of streaming service. Although, how would you make a series based on a main character that doesn't talk? Never mind.
This game was my first RPG, and that's a massive game to start with if you've never played any Final Fantasy or Zelda game before. So I count myself lucky for this gem. It has everything. A great prologue detailing the big boss, detailed character profiles that really got you excited to meet and find everyone in the game, how to buy things in shops and stay at inns, just every minute detail that, if you've never played this kind of game before, you'd have no idea how to do any of it. The best part of Chrono Trigger's manual is a complete skill breakdown of every character. All 8 individualized techs, all 20-something dual techs, and every triple tech laid out for you to gaze at and wonder how each of them will actually look when you animate them in the game. It got you so pumped to charge through and find the characters so you could see all these spell effects in action. Even the most mundane stuff could be appreciated. The manual has charts and lists of items, weapons, and armor, including their attack and defense values, and it concludes with a walkthrough of the first few hours of the game in case you get overwhelmed. There's other Nintendo booklets that are memorable, like Super Mario RPG. Similar to Chrono Trigger, it showed you descriptions on the stats and all the character special moves. It also used Luigi in the instruction booklet as a pathetic attempt to include him in the game. I mean, why the hell is Luigi not in Mario RPG? And if you want to make the argument he'd play too similarly to Mario, yes, I can appreciate that. But to not have them in the game at all is just throwing him into the trash can for no reason. In comparison, Nintendo's rival Sega really spared some expenses in the instruction manual department. Almost every single Genesis game came with a manual that was in black and white. Sometimes even the covers of the manual were black and white. I know they didn't have the oodles of money spilling out of Mario's pockets, but come on, kids wanted to be excited for the game, and having stuff in grayscale went completely against the cool and hip mantra that Sega's commercials at the time were trying to promote. I mean, look at Comic Zone. This is an underappreciated action platforming game. It has bold, stylized colors and a great aesthetic, but these pages don't do it justice at all. Sometimes it even made it tough to tell what the images were trying to show or what the important things were. Many pictures are so tiny, blurry, or zoomed in too far. Streets of Rage is a classic that everyone adores, but look at the over-detailed diagram on stuff that almost everyone's going to know. They duplicate everything in case the player thinks that the second player's life meters and lives mean something completely different. And what's the point of labeling the on-screen characters? They already detailed that in a previous page. That's insulting. And come on, even Sonic games! Your franchise mascot is given a bunch of low-res, small, gray images. That's criminal! I mean, I guess they still do the job. There's diagrams of the controller, and they made it so you were prepared for the game, but man, it kinda dulled the effect of getting this bright, shiny, and expensive game your parents likely had to spend $60 on for you. Sports games were a highlight of the Genesis library, but they too suffered from an underwhelming monochrome color scheme. and grainy pictures. A bit of a digressive tangent here, but even in later years, sports booklets never really evolved. Here's NHL 2005 on GameCube. 10 pages long, with very limited artwork and just checking off some of the basic features. Here's the PlayStation 2's NHL 2K7 booklet. Look at it. Not one screenshot! Nothing! Just 42 pages of text. The highest percentage of the pages are just credits. Oh, probably the best sports instruction booklet I have is Kobe Bryant and NBA Courtside for the N64. Most of it is just high-resolution photos of live game action, and there's not much for information, but it at least has an attractive layout, and there's even a few screenshots that show effective visual representations of the different moves you can do. But back to the Genesis, even in the rare cases when the instructions were in color, they were often poorly designed. Here's The Lion King. That is a quality cover design. The flaming hues, the absolute emotion in the young lion's eyes, and the condescending, laughing face of Scar. Man, Simba looks like such a badass on the cover, and you're so pumped. You're a 9-year-old kid ready to get into it, and then you open it, and wow. Really? It's just a bunch of text and headings. Yeah, there's some shameless promotional imagery ripped right from the movie pasted on there for decoration, but almost nothing of the game, and very little to get excited over, is on there. Not even screenshots of the stages. It's probably the worst instruction booklet I've ever seen for the Genesis. Not all of them were clunkers. Take a look at Earthworm Gems. Again, it's in black and white, but the effort is easily seen in the comic book style opening, explaining the bizarre origin story of how a regular worm and crow evolved from playing out the tried and tested tale of predator versus prey to coincidentally becoming intergalactic rivals due to alien technological interference. Even though the photos suck once again, there's some humorous writing at least that details the various obstacles, stages, characters, and hazards you'll find in this drug-fever dream type of story. Where is this series now, by the way? Of all the reboots that have been done over the years, why hasn't this been touched? It was a big deal back in the mid-90s, and it had its own sequel, which was also praised, and even a TV show. The humor and characters would have aged well too, so this is one of the most surprising no-shows in today's era of remaking everything imaginable. Well, that's a snippet from an ancient gaming era. Let's move ahead in time a bit to when systems like the N64 were the next big thing.
This was the last of the pre-internet eras. And you could argue the last years that instruction booklets were actually a necessity for some people.
With new technology like the Nintendo 64's analog sticks, the early booklets like Mario 64 had to dedicate over a half dozen pages just to outline how to use the new control stick and buttons to move Mario around. Almost every action is matched with an illustration. One thing I'm grateful for is its introduction, getting players immersed in what would be one of the landmark games of all time. Inside Ocarina of Time's booklet was some amazing background artwork and storytelling, making it a treat to open and get excited for Link's first 3D adventure. It was great to know that the developers realized the impact it could have. I think Ocarina of Time's instruction booklet got me the most excited to play a video game since Chrono Trigger. The world map is bordered by a profile of each of Hyrule's races, some of which had never been seen before or were radically redesigned, such as the Zoras. Similar to its 16-bit brother, simple actions like opening chests, playing the ocarina, throwing bombs, and shooting slingshots were illustrated with original artwork. Look at Link's face, anticipating finding something awesome. However, the amount of pages was getting thinner, and they were definitely cutting back to mostly focus on the controls and the gameplay. A disturbing trend that began in the late 90s was the very bland covers for each new N64 release. This doesn't apply to Mario 64. That's friggin' hilarious. And other early games like Wave Race are attractive enough. However, later on, although they were still in color, it was the same gross mustard yellow with the stock title image plastered on the top half, and that was it. Zelda's, I guess, was golden, which is nice, but still, nothing spectacular or creative. And not all N64 booklets had the efficiency and charm of Mario and Zelda. Look at Pokemon Stadium. So I was like 12 years old when I got into Pokemon and could already read well and enjoyed all sorts of data. But I mean, look at all of these words. How many 8 to 10-year-old kids do you think are going to appreciate all of this data? And some of the minutiae is so ridiculously restrictive. I mean, there's requirements for the petite cup listed here. Only Pokemon with a max height of 6 foot 8 inches and a max weight of 44 pounds can take part. Who's going to care about that? When you play the actual game, it just automatically darkens out any unusable Pokemon anyway. But this here makes you think you're going to painstakingly have to analyze each of your monsters in the Pokédex and then handcraft a team. And what? Difficulty level 4?
4? 4 out of what? If it's like 4 out of 5, that's damn difficult. But if it's 4 out of 10, it should be pretty easy. I'm a grown adult and I still don't have any clue what they were trying to explain with this.
Even the battle controls, which is literally just a few button presses every match, looks like it's going to be as efficient as a long physics project. It's animated like a flowchart. They really should have streamlined this. I mean, even the throwaway minigame multiplayer games are explained in detail. Compare this to the Pokemon Game Boy manuals. These things were sick. Just look at the presentation on the original red and blue one. It makes kids feel like they're going to read an actual training manual, drawing them in with a plot that flat out says, "You are an 11-year-old boy living with your mother."
You can tell how far back in gaming time this was. Back when the spread between male and female gamers was perceived to be so one-sided. They didn't even give the main character a gender or a name. They were just like, boys will play this, damn it!
Anyway, the manuals are easy to read, teaching you the basic flows and options in battle, and have fun excerpts with Pokemon entries to get you interested in the different monsters you can catch. But it's also in-depth enough to make you realize there's going to be strategy involved, with a full-page version of the first type effectiveness chart that die-hard fans have memorized in every one of its incarnations since. Gold and Silver's was okay, still effective in explaining the basic themes and concepts, but it lacked some of the charm of the original, and it didn't even bother with Pokemon excerpts. It got lazier as it went, too. Look at Majora's Mask, same boring title page as any shovelware N64 game, and instead of unique animations to show the controls, we have to squint at blurry, low-res N64 screenshots to make out what the booklet is trying to explain to us on a visual level. And the artwork that is there is reused. Link's gotta be so edgy in this game, apparently. Yes, it won't do to not have an angsty, darkness-infused young male protagonist. That just has to be there or the game won't work. Others, like Resident Evil 2, don't do a good enough job using the source material to create an eerie, dark, depressing mood. There's only 9 screenshots in the entire manual and very little creativity. It's just not very memorable. I didn't own a PlayStation growing up, so I don't have much to show you for that, though I did order a Final Fantasy VIII game back in the early aughts, and unsurprisingly, there's some beautiful CG artwork in places, with a satisfying amount of character profiles and information to get you prepared. PlayStation booklets were efficient, compact, and high quality, but didn't often go into the creative depths that others did. This was the era when only Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft were developing mainstream video game consoles, and that's continued fairly consistently to this day. However, this is also where the effort level really dipped in instruction manuals. Not only were the booklets shorter, they were just lazy. Here's Ratchet and Clank, a series aimed at pubescent kids, with very amusing characters always giving wisecracking jokes and puns. But the booklet? It's almost all paragraphs of boring computer fonts, tiny icons, and again, credits. What's the deal with this? And the worst offense is that the writers actually tried to put in some clever wit and flow to some of it, but who in their right mind would want to read through repetitive ad nauseum text anyway when everything looks the same? Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games of all time, but it's an incredibly tidy and short booklet, cutting out a lot of possible storytelling and gameplay details and just throwing you out there, despite the fact that the actual game has a lot more intricacies, exploration, and combat that would be completely new, even to series veterans. Map screen details? Well, here's 2 words to help you out with that. No explanations on zooming in or out or moving things around or what everything means. Item screen and file screen, just kind of titles them up and doesn't explain what they might be used for. The differences between key items and other items, just nothing whatsoever. Compared to Resident Evil 2, which I know I just harped on, but that one at least has full character biographies, a prologue story, item usage, and status screen info, and ends with great detailed tips on what you can do if you get stuck. RE4 just has Leon, Ashley, and that's it. There's even some faulty logic in these instructions. Aim for the enemy's head. Then it says, press the A button. Well, you can't aim a kick at the enemy's head, you have to shoot them in the head first. But because Nintendo can't show that or any blood, they just confuse the reader instead. I always found this ridiculous. Nintendo won't ever say die in their own words if it's referring to the main character. Look at RE4, one of the most violent games they've probably published to this date, and here's the description of your health. Your health is vital to your success. If it disappears, your game ends. When the meter reaches 0, it's game over. Yeah, and then right beside that is a "you are dead" screen. So what's the point of covering this up? What are they trying to hide? Older games like Perfect Dark did this too. In the counter-operative mode, a buddy can play as a computer soldier while you control Joanna. And the description of this mode says, Joanna wins if the mission is successfully completed. The enemy player wins if Joanna is stopped in her tracks. So you can just stop her from walking and you win? And in the same paragraph, it's talking about when a character under the counter-operative's control is killed. So as long as you're not referring to the main character, you can use words like killed? It's just weird. Even other high-profile games like Final Fantasy X had some cheap instruction booklet design. First of all, it gives away a huge scene of the game right on the front cover, and then you open it, and it's not even in color. Square just began to banally state information instead of actually presenting it attractively. Look, it even has to write down what the colors are for the characters when they use the sphere grid, because they knew they weren't going to pay money to put it in color on the book. That's pathetic, and so is the 17 pages length. This is an epic 50-hour game. Yeah, it still has character profiles, but absolutely no information about the world of Spira, the different races, the map, barely anything. And on top of that, the last 5 pages are just shameless ad promotions for Final Fantasy toys, guides, and one of the worst video game movies that's ever been created. Especially compared to the original PlayStation manuals, this is a failure. Gran Turismo 4 really went for the ad campaign. Just look at how many pages are dedicated to books, steering wheels, printers, hats, clocks? Clocks? Give me a break. How many trees gave their lives for this merchandising? Speaking of Gran Turismo 4, again, a very sparse manual with almost no gameplay screens. And given that it had amazing graphics for its time, including being one of the first high-definition visual games, that was a lost opportunity. Another trend of the early 2000 booklets was to use as few pages as necessary, like Red Dead Redemption. The entire story details are crammed into a small rectangle here, and then there's 2 pages for the controls and 2 pages for the game screen, with a bunch more for the multiplayer, which wasn't the main focus. Oh, woo. Yeah, so amazing. Yeah, there's a few more showing aspects like Deadeye and the honor system, but I just wish such a deep, expansive game, an open world game, would have contained more information than this. Also, as a Canadian, I got fooled a couple times when buying Wii games, thinking their manuals were back to their full-fledged glory of thick and detailed past. Look at Mario Galaxy! I was so pumped! It's like, wow, 65 full color pages? This is so amazing! Oh, French. Why would you waste twice as much paper on this? Because it's guaranteed that half of the pages will be wasted, regardless of what language you speak. Yes, there's some people who are fluent in both languages, but that doesn't change the fact that once you've read it once, you're not going to read the exact same again in the language you aren't as proficient in. Jesus, Murphy, did they think we were just gonna practice our secondary language for fun? What the hell was the thought process here? It's the same for Super Mario Bros. U, Tales of Symphonia, Wii Sports Hogwarts Resort, Paper Mario, Thousand Years Door, that's an awesome game by the way, and sometimes they would make 2 separate booklets with separate front and back covers for both languages. Damn!
So, if you don't live in Canada, we're a bilingual country with tons of French speakers, and that's wonderful. But although it's not completely exclusive, English is the primary language for a majority of the country, while most of the French-speaking population is in Quebec. So why not just send most of the English manuals to the rest of the country and most of the French manuals to Quebec? Why inconvenience everyone?
And then look at Red Dead Redemption. The French booklet is larger because it requires more space for the extra words that are required in the French language. It's actually a custom-made language booklet. That's just insane. Now, calming down a bit, there are some winners in this era. Look at the original God of War. Amazing map, illustrated with authentic Greek style and pizzazz. The theme and the atmosphere of the game comes to you instantly as your eyes scan across the different fantastical landmarks you'll encounter. Even the headings are emboldened with burned-in letters searing into a scroll that takes up each page. There's simplified pages that offer an organized view of the controls, which is handy as it's an action game with plenty to do. But other segments, like the enemy profiles, greet you with astonishingly high-quality artwork that makes you want to leap into the game right away and fight. This is complemented by intricate illustrations of items you can acquire, and a huge compendium of character art and details that help you get into the whole vengeance story of Kratos before you even begin. This is how you design a more modern manual. The Metal Gear Solid booklets are also standouts in their beautiful comic-style presentation. Metal Gear Solid 4 is in grayscale, but that's not a huge deal since there's very little variety in the color spectrum of that game anyway. But I digress. The prologue of the story, as well as the entire rest of the manual, is presented in a slick comic book style which is just a fun experience to read through. Funny details like a rat indicating a low threat versus a military tank make it so clear how each gameplay mechanic will work. When Snake gets spotted in the comic, the next page details each of the alert modes that will occur as you scramble to get away and hidden again. Even the attached online mode is hilarious, with an even more detailed comic making fun of concepts such as auto matchmaking.
If you're a creative type and you find manuals like this, it will bring you joy. Joy that, sadly, will not be found much at all in today's era of gaming. The most recent era will be the shortest, because in all honesty, there's not a lot to examine here. With the entire developed world having access to internet, there is no reason to even publish manuals and waste paper. I'm actually just surprised we can even still buy physical copies of games today. Hopefully this, at least, is a tradition that will never completely die out.
Looking at specific examples, Wind Waker's original booklet is just brimming with great colors and detail. But this Wii U version? Oh, it's just so slow, monotonous, and not fun to look at or scroll through. And it's not a separate experience. You're already either viewing the Wii U on the TV or the tablet anyway. You have the game right there, so what's the point? You can't even take the tablet with you to another room because the range on this thing is so abysmal. But I guess progress usually starts with some stumbling blocks. I don't want to log into some website or on a clunky user interface on the Wii U to find an instruction manual, and I'm sure no one else does either. Tell me honestly, how many of you actually went to a website for the sole purpose of reading an instruction manual on your laptop or phone? PS4 games quickly taught me that the end had truly come for instruction booklets. It really doesn't matter who the publisher is or how popular the game is, branding, first party, third party, there's just nothing. You open it up and it's just the disc and some art in the background. Maybe if you're really lucky, you'll get some ads for something, like a Masamune sword. Final Fantasy XV tries to trick you by reusing the game cover art and mimicking a booklet size. Then you open this and... Yep, what I thought. Despite all these no-shows, I remained hopeful that the Persona series would continue to deliver amazing manuals. But alas, Persona 5 broke my heart. I had really enjoyed Persona 3 and 4, some strong narration and great explanation of gameplay mechanics. However, it was not meant to be. Even in this Persona 5, wondrous, hard tin, shiny, luminescent, covery, limited edition set, I open it to find nothing. There's just another link to a website, and while it's fine, it has style, I don't know, I don't enjoy reading for enjoyment as much on screen as I do from actual pages. It's like, I don't know, the same reason many people choose to bring actual books with them on a plane trip instead of e-readers. There's just something tangible about paper that can't be replicated by staring at screens that are sometimes over-brightened and ultra-high resolution. Even the rare games in the last decade that do include manuals, they're just like 5 to 10 pages long, and again, there's a link to download the full manual on the first page. And it pisses me off, because BioShock Infinite is a fantastic game, and even what's here in the manual is promising and shows some good design. Why couldn't they just go all out and make the rest on here? Why steer the player in 2 different directions? Kingdom Hearts 3? Well, you'll see.
We waited 13 long years between Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, and this is what they conceptualized. Three cheesy cards with promotional artwork and a cheesy holographic image. They had 13 years and couldn't even design an instruction booklet? Well, for my pilot episode, I sure didn't design this very well, because the quality of the instruction booklets just seemed to go down as time passed. So I apologize for ending this on kind of a whimper.
But here's a thought. You know how there's deluxe versions of some games? Almost every AAA game nowadays can be bought in like 3 different versions with action figures, soundtracks, amiibos, clocks, a bunch of cool but useless stuff. I've never purposely bought any of these editions. Even the Persona 5 case was just a mistake made by some teenager at the Best Buy that happened to benefit me.
But I would honestly pay $10 to $15 extra to buy a top version of a game that has a manual. It would ensure that not too many trees are sacrificed to make them, but for old school gamers who enjoy collecting them, it would give them something to read and enjoy before getting into the game.
But I'm old, and don't let stuff go easily, and I'm sure the online features have worked fine. Not to mention, most games now have built-in tutorials on, well, everything. There's no longer any data restriction to withhold any game from putting what you need to know in there somewhere, if a player actually does get stuck. But that's not separating anything. Booklets used to be a separate entity, completely apart from any technology that was just a fun read.
Well, that's where I'm coming from, but I would love to hear from you. Did you have any favorite game booklets growing up? Do you think they should still be made in some form today? Maybe you're glad they're gone, and good riddance, and that's okay too. Please let me know in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed this overindulgence on gaming specifics, please subscribe to Gaming Introspection and ensure that you'll get content like this next weekend as well. Again, thank you so much, gamers, and I'll see you next Friday for the next episode.